On this episode of the AVB podcast, we've come all the way up here to northern Michigan, to West Branch, Michigan, as a matter of fact, to the Brews and Blues Festival, to hang out with Mr. James Armstrong. How's it going?
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you, James. Sitting back, I don't often get a chance to listen to my guests have conversations about deeply meaningful things before we sit down and have a chat. And I have a certain pattern that we start these shows off, but we'll come back to that because I'm actually really interested in the conversation I was sort of listening to in the other room before we got started here.
I understand.
You've spent your entire life traveling around the country playing blues music.
Correct.
And during most of that time, you've also been a black gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
That's been an issue for you sometimes, huh?
It has, I guess, where I grew up, there was just kind of not an issue in my home because I was raised by my father from 6 months old. Mm-hmm. And
where at?
In Santa Monica, California.
Ooh, nice area.
So when I started touring, I knew there was issues of racism and things, but I didn't realize how strong it was until I started traveling from the West Coast across the country, and I was enlightened.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Let's roll into that. Tell me about growing up in Santa Monica with your dad.
Well, it's amazing. He was a guitar player, and when he met my mom, who was a singer, they started a little band, and then I was born, and then they got separated and divorced, and he took over. My mom didn't, she went her way.
That's an unusual story.
It was,
the time,
especially
right?
in 1957, for a black man to step up to the plate, and he did. He was a really good guitar player, had a career, but he gave it up, went and got a regular job, and gave up music, but just instilled it in me to keep playing. There were instruments all over the house. I started off playing drums when I was 5, and we did a little duet. Then I tried saxophone. Then I eventually went to the guitar and just tried to follow in his footsteps.
So music has been around you from day one.
From my whole life.
Do you know any of the story, but the behind the circumstances of your mom leaving and your dad hanging out?
Yeah, my mom actually was an alcoholic.
Okay.
And she just couldn't stop. And, he tried and tried. And they moved from, I was born in California. I guess she got pregnant in Philadelphia. So he wanted maybe a whole new circumstance would help change her. Mm-hmm. But it didn't. But he was never bitter at her. I was able to see her and talk to her whenever I wanted to.
There's another unusual story for the time, right?
Yeah, he never said anything bad about my mom. Never did. Yeah. So it was just, having that background with him in California and Santa Monica, which was just so diverse. I mean, one of my best friends was Asian, my other best friend was Mexican, and then the whites, the blacks. It was just, I never lived more than like a few blocks from the beach. So that West Coast ocean thing is just...
How do you grow up next to the beach and become a blues guy instead of a surfer, man?
I know. Well, I have a story, and it's true. I always say, I say it on stage sometimes, I'm the only blues man that ever surfed. And it's true. When I was 17, a friend of mine took me out, and 2 friends, and we did a bunch of waves by the Santa Monica Pier, and then the next weekend, I tried it again, and I almost drowned. So
oh, yeah?
Surfed twice, and almost drowned once, and that was it. Never did it again.
What did Dad do when he gave up music and went to a real job?
Became a house painter.
Okay.
Yeah, I came self-employed, house painting, and
so entrepreneurial too.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is too, I think everybody's life background. I went to 8 elementary schools. We moved a lot,
right.
A lot for whatever reason. His life and things that he had to do to take care of me, it wasn't as stable as you think a life should be, but I think everything happens for a reason. If I would have been in a stable home, I wouldn't have been able to do maybe what I do now and enjoy it, because every night I'm in a different place. Every a different country, a different city. It's just, so being raised like that, I have no problem with change.
Was music important to you early on, or was it just that annoying thing that Dad bugged you with all the time?
Yeah, it wasn't annoying. In the beginning, you know, I didn't have to, but there were instruments all the time. So I started playing drums like as a little kid and doing a duet. And he had a really good friend that was actually a famous drummer, and I can't remember his name. But he gave me lessons, but I just didn't feel it. And then it was like this novelty thing. Here's this 5, 6-year-old. My dad would play guitar, and we'd do a bunch of shows, but I didn't feel it. And
Wait, you were playing shows with your dad at 6?
At 6.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, just keeping a groove, and he'd play guitar, and people, oh, look at a little kid. But I didn't think I didn't feel it. I just tried. Then I gave that up, I think around 7 or 8, and then he goes, what do you want to do? And I said, saxophone. So got me a saxophone, got a teacher, and the guy made me stand in a corner. That's how I had to practice. I had to stand in a corner, and I went, well, this ain't cool.
Why did you have to stand? What was the deal with that?
Well, that was, I think, just the sound. When you stand in the corner, it comes right back at you, which makes sense now, but when you're that young.
You're just being put in the corner.
So I didn't do that for long, but there was always guitars around, and I had picked them up a lot, but it just didn't do anything. But one time, sitting on a couch like this, I picked it up and was watching TV and I did something, and something happened, and every time, I think I was 7 or 8, 9 or something then, and I went, oh, okay. And that's where I kept going.
When did it become work for you?
You know, that's interesting. It probably became work for me. That's a good question. When I got, right before I got signed with HighTone Records, I was signed by a guy named Bruce Bromberg. He's the guy who found Robert Cray. Okay. And then Joe Louis Walker was next, and then I was next, and Bruce was from California, Northern. But I was doing a thing in Santa Monica at a place called Mr. B's. I did a Friday and Saturday and a Sunday matinee, and I put. Actually, I met Bruce before that, and he goes, yeah, because I knew who he was, and the Robert Cray. Somebody said he should see me, and I didn't have a band, so I literally had to ask a friend if I could use her band, and did the little audition, and he, I guess, was impressed. But he said, he said 2 things. He said, you got to go and get a regular gig and start playing more, and you have to get away from that Hendrix thing. And I knew what he meant, because all I ever did was Hendrix. I mean, I was a Hendrix freak. And I liked the blues, but I was more into rock.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and the first band because I was in my, then I think I was in my early 30s, but up until that point, first band I toured with was a country band, country and western, and toured with them for a couple.
So it wasn't genre specific for you. It was about music in general.
Just music. I loved just music, and for me, I liked the blues, but I didn't want to become a blues musician. I thought that you could play anything, and that's where I commend Bruce Bromberg. He taught me so much, and that's sort of sad, but that's how the industry is. Any industry, you have to be put in a category. Mm-hmm. And when I first saw a write-up of me, it was like blues guitarist, and I called Bruce and go, no, I'm not. I'm a guitarist.
Right.
I'm not a blues. And he goes, no, kid, this is how we got to do it. So
became business.
That's when it became business.
Okay. So how did you do with the business part of this shit?
Well, my story is interesting. It changed drastically. I went and recorded the first I had recorded something before that with a band called Mama Roo.
What year is this, by the way?
Oh God, I think my first recording with HighTone Records was 94 or 95. But I did something before that with a band called Mama Roo. I helped form, and we were signed by Crescendo Records. But when I did this first one for Bruce, it was called Sleeping with a Stranger. And it came out and just was getting incredible reviews. It just because, like, whatever, it was just doing really well. And I was a new kid on the block. They were grooming me to be this next Robert Cray or whatever. But what happened was on April, oh God, I think it was April 8th, and I lived in Sunnyvale, California. It's by San Jose. And there was a 8:05 in the morning, and there was a home invasion. And it was my home. It was a very safe area. We left the doors open, that type of area. My wife at the time was going to chiropractic school. We had a nanny. I had a two and a half year old son, James Jr., and 9-month-old son, John. And I'm on the floor playing with James, my little boy, and the door opens, and literally some guy walks in with a knife. I didn't know him. He didn't know me, and I stood up and I go, "What the hell are you
Just
doing?"
completely random.
Just opened the door. We didn't let, there's no crime where
Right.
no problems, nothing ever. Anyway, I stand up, and next thing I know, I'm being stabbed. The first stab wound was here, and got hurt really bad, and I'm trying to grab my son. And
Kids
I tried,
there? Yeah.
Yeah, well, the nanny grabbed the 9-month-old John and went into the bedroom and locked the door. But James, she couldn't get James Jr., so I'm trying to grab him after this guy was stopped for a minute, and we lived on the second floor. And I came out, and I had thought James, I let James down, and I was going to walk down the stairs, but the guy, excuse me, I twitched when I see it. The guy picked him up and threw him over the balcony.
Holy
onto the ground
shit.
below. So I went down and picked James up, and I thought he was dead, and I walked to the curb, and that's when I collapsed, and I had James, and I saw the guy coming down. I thought he was just going to finish us off, but he went off somewhere and carjacked some other people, did some other crime, but they finally caught him, and he's still in prison. And
He's still in prison from that.
yeah, and it was 21 years ago.
Holy shit! What was do you know what the deal was with this?
I think he was drugs.
Oh, drugs.
High on drugs. Yeah, but it was just a neighborhood. It just didn't happen. At that crime, that was that kind of neighborhood. It was a family neighborhood. And
How was your boy?
Actually, my son is 24 today. He has minor brain issues. He has minor issues. It was sort of bad when he was younger. He was in intensive care for 4 weeks. It was that bad. But he is okay. He's working. He's doing well. He's just, He's
got some shit to deal with it for a while.
Yeah. But what happened to me, I woke up in intensive care, and my wife at the time goes, they have to take you back in because there's something wrong with your left arm. And so they went in and they removed collarbone and a bunch of stuff. Make a long story short, I woke up again after a second operation, and my whole left arm didn't move, and it didn't work. And the doctor said, "Well, sorry, sir, you have severe nerve damage. Your arm might never move." Now, I was supposed to go on my first world tour 2 weeks
Holy
later.
shit.
So,
Okay.
And I woke up and didn't move. Make a long story short, I'm handicapped. I only have 2 fingers that kind of work. My hand is not, I can't go like that like other guitar players. This is my fretting hand. I can only go like that. This finger does not bend, so you need that finger to play guitar. You see, that one won't bend.
It doesn't bend at all.
So what happened was my whole life ended. I just thought I'd never play guitar again, and the doctors and therapists and everybody just nerve damage that you just never know. But
All right, so hang on. Because I want to get your mindset at this point. So how old are you at the time?
I was 36.
So you're 36 years old. You've spent your entire life as a musician, building up your career. You're about to go on your first world tour. You get some random, out of nowhere guy comes into your house, attacks you, throws your kid off a balcony, and has left you with no ability to do the job that you've spent your entire life building up to.
Correct.
So it was a good day.
Yeah, it changed everything, you know. Over the years, it just nerves. I learned so much because I just didn't know. It's like maybe 8, 9 months later, my arms started to move, but my hand wouldn't. Nothing came here. And just medically, you know, I didn't know this, but people say there's electricity in your body, and it's totally true because I was watching TV with my boys and wife, and I fell on the ground screaming, holding this hand because it felt like a lightning bolt was hitting right here in the
Your nerve came
center.
alive.
And the nerve, I called the doctor right away, and she goes, well, that's good because that means nerves. Now, nothing changed. I mean, but it took months, years. I remember maybe 9 months later. Because what happened was, slowly I was able to move one finger. And I commend the record company, Bruce Bromberg. They put all this money and publicity, and they never gave up. They kept pushing me. And so they said, well, you know, this is like a year or two later. It's like, well, you know, put a band together. I said, I can't play. I don't want to play anymore. And they said, well, try. So my band built me a table because I couldn't put anything on my shoulder. And I was still screwed. The fingers didn't move. So I started playing slide on a table and started doing some touring because the CD was doing well. And I always just thought people were feeling sorry for me and they wanted me to, but I was so embarrassed because it didn't sound right. Then they wanted to do another CD, and I only had one finger that literally I went dun, 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 and I did another CD. I had Joe Louis Walker, a bunch of friends, Doug McLeod, a bunch of guys come in and play guitar, and I just picked out notes, but I wrote songs. Started touring with that. Slowly, the other fingers started to move a little bit, but not like this. I can't play. So what happened was it's just my whole style had to change. You got to think I used to chord, and anything that came in my brain I could do. I could play fast, but I could only go ding, 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 ding. And I kind of just, for years and years and years, was just angry. And I should have been grateful because I was able to still work, but I didn't feel like a good guitar player.
You felt like you were handicapped.
Oh yeah, because all my friends that I was on that level, all they could go and all I could do was ding, and the way my hand is, your callus should be right here. You should press a string there, but my hand is screwed up, so my callus is on the side. I had to relearn everything.
Right.
But
talk to me about the mental work that goes involved in that, because you got a lot going on, right? Because number one, it's not just you that has a problem. You've got to deal with all the issues that have come up with your son. You've got to deal with all the legal issues that are coming around as well. That process takes a long time, as I'm sure you're aware. Mm-hmm. So this is, like you said, this is over years when you're dealing with this. Talk to me about your mental state there.
The mental state was very angry. I was just because I looked at it as all I ever wanted. It wasn't about the success or the money or the fame. I just loved to play guitar. Even when I was hurt and couldn't play, in the beginning, I used to lay it on my lap and just strum it, to hear the strings. That's how much I loved the instrument. But I couldn't do anything with my left hand. But over time, I kept touring and just got to a point where I don't know, maybe 5, 8 years ago, I don't know. I literally got tired of being angry, because
Okay.
it was like, it's so embarrassing. Like, for me, it was like I still have this. I had toured a lot, toured the country, the world, been to a lot of things, had some success, but I was not happy with myself because I still hear me doing this and that, and the tone is different. But what happened was, not, I don't know, 5, 8 years ago, I always believed in God. I was more spiritual than religious.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally asked God for some help one day. I said, look, please, I just don't want to be, I was just mad at the world, really. Not individual, but just poor James. It's just, I got a raw deal.
Every time you played a guitar, even if it was successful.
Every time I picked it up, it would hurt. I mean, my hand hurt, and it still does.
So no matter how good you did, you always felt like you should be doing better.
Always. And at the tone, there's certain things that I just couldn't get that I know were there. So anyway, I did this praying thing, and just to let you people know, prayers work. I knew they did, but I always thought God was busy with other people. He did. He was. You guys have more problems than me. So I prayed. Well, anyway, what happened? Make a long story short, I woke up the next day, and for some reason, I wasn't as angry. All right, it's just something that next day changed. I can't play any different. It didn't change this. It changed this. Mm-hmm. So my whole attitude changed, and I guess I played better because something happened. But in part of my show, I wrote a song to give back to God, and I wrote a song called Guitar Angels. And that's like my signature song. I wrote it for me. I wasn't going to put it out. But it's basically, I believe God sent me some angels. And the angels that he sent me play guitar. Because if it wasn't for that experience, I wouldn't be out doing what I do. And I think, like I've traveled the world. I play a lot. And I think my message is, which I do in my show, I will do tonight, and I'll do the song to let people know, no matter what happens to you, just keep going. Just keep trying. Even if you don't want to, because I didn't want to. I had people that helped me, and they were angels. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be dead to be an angel. That's in my song. There are angels that are alive that can help you. But if you don't, keep trying, pray, do something to keep going, because I shouldn't have the success I have. To me, the things that I've done since that day, I'm shocked, really, with what it sounds like to me. But, I think what happened is I remember when I did start trying to, that second recording I did, I was in the studio, and then Bruce goes, what happened to your voice? And I go, yeah, I hear it too. I don't know. I always thought I was a decent singer, but I think God took away this and made my voice a little better. I'm serious. Okay. Little things like that is something that I think about. I always interacted with the crowd a lot, but I think I do it more now because I can't stand up there and play and play and play because my hand hurts. It gets tired, so I have to talk to you a little bit.
Right.
And they like that, you see. So everything happens for a reason, but sometimes it's not so cool.
Right. Yeah. So since we're talking about the not so cool parts, let's go back to the first question I had for you. So as you're touring around the country, as a musician, as a black musician specifically, there's a lot of shit that you have to deal with that you weren't used to when you were growing up.
Yeah, well, I heard about it because my dad, was a jazz player, and he knew Nat King Cole, It's a guy named Irving Ashby, who was Nat King Cole's guitar player. That was like my uncle. He wasn't really, it was my dad's best friend. 1966 and 67, he won the Playboy Jazz Award. His name was Irving Ashby, one of the most incredible guitar players. But, so my dad was in that world and told me a lot of stories about, blacks not being able to be in the same hotel.
How did that conversation come up? Was it just hanging out with your dad? Your dad's telling stories?
I heard it when they were talking. From just being a little boy.
So they're just they're just jawing amongst each other in your hair.
But for me, when the world I grew up in Santa Monica, that was history. That was back then. That stuff didn't happen.
Okay.
The first tour I ever did, I told you, I was 17 years old, and I was in a country band. My dad let me go. I'd worked with the band in town, and I was the only black in the band, and I was the youngest probably by 10 years. I guess I could play very well, way before I got hurt. And it was a 2-week tour, and I was supposed to graduate high school that when we left, and the guy asked my dad, I really need him. My dad said, okay, you can go, but you have to finish high school, do your diploma or whatever it's called when you get back, which I did. Anyway, we drive to Arkansas, Kansas. Coffeyville, Kansas was the first stop. We're late. I'm 17 years old. Had never really left California, my first tour. I'm all excited. We're rushing on stage. We're setting up. There's 6 of us. I'm the only black. Some guy walks up to me. He's down there, and he goes, hey, hey, and he's screaming, and I go, oh, can I help you, sir? And he goes, yeah, are you in the band? And I go, yeah, I'm a happy kid. I said, yeah, I'm in the band. I'm the guitar player. And he goes, oh, no, hell no. There must be some kind of problem. And I go, well, what's the problem? He said, boy, there's no blacks allowed in this club. And I went, just because I'd heard about that shit. This is 1974. 74. And I was shocked, okay, because I didn't hear that in California.
You've never experienced anything.
No, now don't be wrong. I had, but not just bam,
just right in your face.
A club, you could not play in a club,
right?
Because anyway, the band leader comes over, Jade, who he told my dad he'd take care of me. He was like my second dad. Mm-hmm. He was a great guy, Jade. Still is. He's alive. But anyway, him and the guy start getting in an argument, and they're literally getting ready to fight. And we were supposed to be booked there for 2 weeks. So here I am at 17, and I'm going, what are we going to do? We just drove 2,000 miles or whatever, and So I broke them up. I said, look, guys, we can do something. We can figure this out. I said, what I'll do is, because I heard of this, and I had to do this when I was younger. When I was 15 or 16, I played in a couple bars. I had to go outside.
The fuck out of here.
And that's what I did. I told them, I said, I will go outside on the breaks. And Jay goes, James, no, I don't want you to do that. I said, Jade, I'll do it. And the guy goes, okay, that'll work. So for 2 weeks, I do the show. Then I go outside on the breaks and sit in the van. And
how do you not turn around and torch the fucking place at that point? Because seriously, fuck you.
That was my first experience as a touring musician. Day one. Ugh.
Yeah. So, seriously, how do you not burn the fucking place down? How is it that your attitude on that is, well, fuck it, I'll just go outside?
You know what it did for me, though? You could feel it at night. I think I used to be really good. I think that was the time before I got hurt. I could see people, when I would do a solo and play, they would go like that. And then that's when I went, well, this instrument, this music can change people. It can help them realize, because they probably never heard a young black guy that played country. I mean, country western. Right. I loved Hank Williams, all
Yeah?
those guys. Oh,
So you
dude.
you didn't just play it because it was a gig. You played it because you loved it.
Oh man,
Okay.
music is I love it. So anyway, I think that was I had out of that whole 3-week tour, I had one old couple in Texas come up to me and say, "Young man, you can really play." And for me, that made
was
the whole
it.
tour. Really.
And
I mean,
and it's
to
worth
be-
it to you
for
that.
people that don't probably have never shaken hands with a black person. I mean, we're talking some rural areas that they probably never interacted with a black man. For them to come up and say, you know, what they did and thank me, that made me feel like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do.
So one of the things you said when we were talking in the other room before we started this is that you said there's 12 or 13 people that you knew for sure that you were the only black person that ever crossed the hearth of their doorstep, basically.
Yeah, I lived in a town, and I don't know if I want to name the town because
Sure.
it was in Michigan.
Okay.
Let's just leave it at that.
All right.
And I was probably one of 2 blacks that lived in that town. And there's a few stories. I walked around the corner one time, and some woman was looking at her phone or whatever, and we were coming toward each other, and she looked up and she, ah! And, you know, this was in 2000 something, dude.
What?
And I'm like, are you kidding me? And just some other instances in that town. And I knew, because I had toured, you know, the world, and I knew it still happened. But then there's some small rural areas that I was surprised that it was still that strong. So I believe the reason God put me into that town there in Michigan, there are probably 10 or 15 homes that I befriended. I became friends with people, and I know that they had never had a black person having dinner at their home or sitting on their couch meeting their kids, and I was able to help them. But then for me, I got tired of trying to be Martin Luther King.
That was my question, though. Was that important to you, though?
You know, it wasn't something I realized I was doing at the time. I think I was just being James, being the guy from California that just likes everybody.
So you didn't have
But
perspective on it until
after I
afterwards.
left, I went, oh, that's why I was put in this situation. But it was really sad. I didn't want to come home from tours.
No.
You know, no. Why? I lived by myself.
Oh, because that was the town you
That was
lived
the
in.
town.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't want to. It was like I keep going. Oh, guys, come on, let's stay together a little bit longer. You know, because my band lived in other states, and we'd all meet, and I was like, but that's what happened.
So it's funny because now that you've said that you didn't realize it at the time, because it almost, the way you were talking about it in the other room, it almost seemed to me like that was something that was important to you, that you almost took it on as like a mantle, like.
Maybe I did unconsciously, but I didn't realize it at the time. But, you know, it was something, because when I was home off of the road, I live in this small town, and I got to go to eat here, and people knew me because I did James Armstrong, because I did a festival in that town, and it was a big deal, and I did really well, and the whole day, so it was like, oh, we got James Armstrong in our town.
Right.
He lives here. So I was a part of that community, but I didn't, you know, I'm not saying everyone was like that,
Oh, of course.
but I'm going to say 90%. Yes, I'm sorry. They really were. But it was, you know, they just, what you don't know, you don't know. I mean, it's the same. I did it myself. I had I didn't have an issue with Muslims, but I went to Beirut, Lebanon. This is Beirut, Lebanon. I did
What year?
this is when the whole planet was looking for Bin Laden.
Okay.
I don't know, 2005, 6, I don't know. But anyway, it was all a propaganda that I heard. And what my dad had taught me so much. And he had passed, been dead for quite a while. And I had this little thing when I went over there. I wasn't racist, but it was like, eh. And then after being there the first week and meeting all these beautiful, wonderful people, I was mad at myself for having that negative thought in my head. And I did 2 weeks, and then I guess I did well. They called me back like 8 months later and did bigger show. I actually met Bin Laden's brother. That's a long story.
One of them. There's like
One of
300
the
of them.
guy
Or
that
right?
that he came to 3 shows. He owned all of the Hard Rock cafes in the
Oh, okay,
movies.
part of the construction side.
And that's where
I
I met him. But that's the whole thing. So I really look at racism, especially in the small communities. If everybody there, even the black community, even the Asian community, if that's all you see every day, you don't know any difference. And if your parents have an issue or your grandparents, that kind of rubs off on you. You see what I'm saying? If you live in a place, even now there's more social media, the kids can open up an app and see an Asian, if they live in a rural white area or vice versa. But, there's times when that didn't happen, where all you see is people that look like you. So when you go somewhere and see somebody else, I did a show in Norway. And they had to take us out to the boat to this big fjord, and they had big signs, James Armstrong. I was embarrassed. I mean, they had the flower for that. I'm serious. This is some shit that happens in people's life. Yeah. So all these people were coming up, and I'm embarrassed because it's all these people in this island. Dude, there's a little girl walking up to me she must have been 5 or 6, some beautiful flowers. I bend down and go, "Hi, sweetheart." And I grab the flowers, and she's the cutest thing. She grabs my hand. Give me your hand. She grabs my hand, and she goes, and her parents are going, "Oh, no." And I went, "Sweetheart, it's okay." And I gave her a hug. She had never seen a black person. She's going, "Dude, you got something on your hand."
There was a story my grandmother used to tell
Jeez.
about walking my aunt around when she was, because my aunt was born in England. Okay, and was telling. I remember the story. She was pushing around in a pram, a baby stroller, right? And she's like 1 or 2 years old, like just getting out to talk. And my grandmother would tell the story about the first time that she saw a black man standing on the corner, and my aunt apparently looked over and went, "Mommy, he's a chocolate." Like thought he was made of chocolate, right?
Of course.
And it's just
You can't. They're children.
Yeah.
You can't. See, you can't blame them. But what happens is, that's why when I said that I went to 8 elementary schools, I went here, I saw every nationality on the planet probably before I was 10. You see, so it was like, oh. But if you don't see that,
right,
until you're 19, I mean, there are people literally that don't see that on all sides. I know some black communities that have problems because they live where they live, and it's all African American. They hardly see a white person or a Mexican or an Asian. So they have issues. So it's across the board. But, with our society today, with social media and with things that are going on, we need to open up more. We need to open up because the demographic of this whole world is changing,
Let me ask you a question, because you've traveled all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Being black in America is a very specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is it different being black in the rest of the world?
Mm-hmm. My dad told me stories of the jazz. All he knew was the jazz world. And when I got older and started listening to the jazz cats and their stories, because I love history, I was going, why in the hell did most of them in the 50s and 60s, and probably started in the 40s, when they went to Paris and went to England, they'd go over there and wouldn't come back. And then I realized it, because in the 50s and 60s here, it was fucked up. So they would go over there, and the racism, it's not that It's there, but not like it was here or is here. To answer your question, yes. You go over there as a musician, if you're a black musician, a blues artist, jazz, whatever, you're respected for your craft. You're respected, and it's like, come on, and you're not treated. They didn't have Jim Crow over there. They didn't have the racism. So many musicians went there, did a show, and never came back. Many. And it's still that way today. You still feel like you're not looked at or looked in. It still is that.
When everything's all said and done, because you've had a long career at this point, you're still continuing on that career. Mm-hmm. But when it's all wrapped up for you, what do you want to have left behind?
I think basically the message of Guitar Angels, because that's probably going to be my legacy. I'm a handicapped 2-finger guitar player, and I've been able to have a very successful career. I look at, you said something before, because I remember when I was talking to my bass player probably a couple days before I got attacked, and I was going to conquer the world. I was so good. Well, I'm just going to kick butt. We're just going to, And years later, when I was able to start working, I'm just so grateful to do what I do. I think everybody's put on the planet to do what they're supposed to do, and I think I'm supposed to be a guitar player. I'm handicapped, but I'm still playing guitar. So my message is for people to figure out what they want to do and do it. You can do it. There's a spot for everybody. But with the blues is basically what we're talking about. The blues is such a healing music, for me, because it's happy. I try to write positive, happy songs, funny, just things that I go places and around the world, and some 19-year-old kid will come up and go, dude, I thought the music was sad and depressing, but when I hear it from you, it's just fun. It's like, where can I hear more? And I go, that's my message. I can't play. I probably won't be like I wanted to be, this guy where it's like, oh, James Armstrong was this incredible guitar player. Nah, I don't think that's going to happen. But the whole message of maybe my songs and the whole package is what my legacy will be.
James, it's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you, AJ.
That'll be it for this episode of the AVB Podcast. Make sure you check out all the links below to see more about James and, of course, ourselves and all of our sponsors. And there's some more videos coming up. You know what to do. Thanks for hanging out. See you next time, folks. That'll do it for this episode of the AVB Podcast. Don't forget you can subscribe to our full audio episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you find your audio podcasts. The full episodes, highlights, and our live off-the-floor performance videos can be found at our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the AVB Podcast. Of course, you'll find links to our incredible sponsors and this week's guest in the description below. The AVB Podcast is part of the Border City Network. Find more great content at bordercitynetwork.com. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.